But this isn't that. We're mixing into private equity for real. And I got everybody downstairs generating ideas.
So Axe is getting into private equity this season, huh? Well, clearly he's getting real deep into that private equity. But what is private equity really? Because it's such a broad term that it encompasses a lot of different stuff. Well, that's what we're gonna cover in this video. So private equity, like I said, it's a pretty broad topic, but basically it means any investment that's not public. So it's all about private investments. Private equity, private investments, obviously, right? So far in this season, the type that we've seen in billions is venture capital, which is a form of private equity where you're providing capital to entrepreneurs. So people trying to start a business. Like in the recent episode, we saw that robotics company, right? That was a startup that needed capital to expand. So we've seen venture capital in this show before. You remember when Mike Birbiglia was on the show, I think that was last season, and him and Taylor had a little love connection. And now we're seeing another love connection with Axe and Rebecca Cantu, who really has that can-do attitude. So I guess the first thing you gotta know about venture capitalists is that they're frisky people. So venture capital is also the type of funding that fueled companies like Lyft and Uber. And you know, Lyft just had their IPO, which I made a video about, which you haven't seen, I'll link to it right here. But all the venture capitalists that were involved in Lyft in the early stages, they all cashed out as soon as the company went public. That was their exit. That's when they finally were getting paid. But venture capital isn't the only type of private equity. It is one of the most exciting though, which is probably why the writers are focusing on it. But there's another type of private equity that's real exciting too. The writers in the past used to focus on a lot as well. And that's the LBO, or the leverage buyout private equity. So how a leverage buyout works is that an outside party will go to a company and buy it. But the way that they'll buy it is actually leveraging that company's assets with the bank. So they get funding with that company's assets on the line. It's kind of crazy. They put up some of their capital as well, but a lot of the capital is from the leveraged part, which is from that company's assets. And this was super popular in the 80s. This is where that term corporate raiders came from. And the actual corporate raiding process is not nice. So a corporate raid would typically feature a leveraged buyout, as we talked about, that would involve a hostile takeover of the company. So the company is not trying to get bought out, but these guys will come in and buy it out anyway. And then what they'll do is basically strip the company apart and start selling its assets. They'll lay off everybody and they'll do a bunch of restructuring. And it's looked at really poorly, right? Because you got these Wall Street guys coming in, killing a business and just running away with the money. And then everybody gets screwed. Pensions are lost. All these workers that have been with the company for 20 plus years get nothing. And like I said, this was popular in the 80s, which is why you got a character like Gordon Gekko over here. He was doing this stuff all the time. And you know, it was looked at unfavorably, but at the same time, everybody thought it was cool because Wall Street was probably the coolest in the 80s. You know, a bunch of cocaine and taking over a company, it was all in a good day's work. Back when they had those big ass cell phones too. But these corporate raids and these private equity deals still happen. I actually made a video about one of these leverage buyouts last summer. That was the whole Toys R Us story when they went bankrupt. These PE guys, which is, you know, private equity, they came in and just ripped apart the company. And that's when you had the same stories about the workers who have been there for so long getting nothing while these guys were selling it for parts. Go watch that video. You'll see how this process actually takes place. It's kind of complicated, but it's really interesting. And you'll see how these guys just murdered this poor giraffe. Now, obviously not all private equity is that cutthroat. And actually you might not know, but a lot of everyday restaurants and stores that we go to are actually owned by private equity firms. So one example is the fast food restaurant Arby's, the fast food joint that really pushes their meat. They're just pushing their meat on everybody. We have the meats. All right, Arby's, relax. Keep your meats. No, but I like Arby's. I mean, for the curly fries, not necessarily the meats. But anyways, I was saying that they are owned by a private equity shop. So Arby's actually falls under this company called Inspire Brands. And Inspire Brands is a restaurant group that not only owns Arby's, but they own Buffalo Wild Wings, the Rusty Taco. I've never been to a Rusty Taco before. I don't know if I want to eat at a Rusty Taco, to be honest. But they got Sonic too. So that's a whole bunch of, you know, huge restaurants and chains all under this one company, Inspire Brands. But then Inspire Brands is owned by Roark Capital Group, or is it Roark? I don't know. I can't pronounce anything. So they're a private equity firm with over 12 billion in equity capital, and they're focused on leverage buyout investments. So this private equity group owns that entire set of brands and restaurants, but they own a lot more too. Anytime Fitness, they own that. Culver's, ooh, Jimmy John's, they got Focus Brands too. Auntie Anne's Pretzels, Cinnabon, Jamba Juice. Oh, they own the whole mall. And then when people are done with that, they can go to their Great Expressions dental centers. Wow, they're really integrated. But actually, I got a buddy who's a dentist, and he was telling me how many private equity firms are coming into the dental space. They're buying up everything. And you won't even know that it's a private equity firm that you're going to. You'll think it's just your neighborhood dentist. Because what they'll do is buy up a whole group, but they'll keep all the names the same so that people don't know. But my dentist friend, he hates these private equity groups because the actual quality of the dentistry goes down once that private equity group buys the dental practice. Because then they start cutting costs. They start telling their dentists to charge their people more. And you know the way they do that, right? They start telling the dentist to start finding some problems. Like, you're gonna get a bonus if you fill this many cavities. So if you go into one of these dental practices, you know, these guys are gonna find all sorts of stuff because that's their incentive structure. Do a bunch of surgeries and crap that you don't need. And that's a common criticism of private equity, where they will go and buy a business, but they don't know how to run it properly. So they run it into the ground, which is kind of how I felt about Burger King, which is another private equity owned company. So Burger King is owned by Restaurant Brands International, which owns Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. But then Restaurant Brands International is owned by the private equity group 3G Capital, which is one of the biggest private equity groups in the world. They own Anheuser-Busch, Burger King, Tim Hortons, Heinz, Kraft, Popeyes. They own a bunch. So I mean, this is just my personal experience with Burger King. I used to like it, then these private equity guys bought it, and then they just started doing weird, stupid stuff. Like, one genius idea that these PE guys had, and I was reading an article about this, was that they were going to completely revolutionize the Burger King menu, because that's what was holding back the sales. That's why McDonald's was killing them. So they're like, okay, we got all these ingredients, but we only got so many options on the menu. Why is that? Why don't we switch up the ingredients? Why don't we mix them together? Create some new stuff. So you guys know the original chicken sandwich, right? That's been around forever. So these PE guys are like, all right, we got a long bun. What can we make out of this long bun? How come it's only a chicken sandwich? How about we take that long bun and make a extra long cheeseburger? And that's literally what they called it, extra long cheeseburger. I mean, really? That's your idea? That must have been one of the suggestions they took from one of the stores, from one of their stoned high school kids who operates the midnight window. Wait a minute, Burger King isn't even open late night, is it? But yeah, that's just one of the stupid ideas that a PE firm can come up with. And these guys also own Popeyes, right? And I don't know if this is true for sure. Like, I think I read this, but the whole marketing around Popeyes, their whole goal with that was to make it less black and more friendly so white people could go eat there too, which is why they introduced this lady in the marketing. I think her name is Auntie Annie, but she's supposed to make everything seem more friendly. And let me clarify real quick what I mean by less black. Those are my words. That's just the impression I got when I was reading that article about the strategy of these PE guys running it. They were saying more friendly, but it felt like, you know, hidden speak for less black, better for white people. Obviously, they can't come out and say that flat out. And hey, I could be wrong. I mean, that's just how I was reading it. But anyway, and I don't know, I never followed up to see how that works, but at least where I live, you know, you wouldn't see Popeyes in the suburbs. Even though I love Popeyes so much, I could kind of see what they mean about making it a little more friendly though. Last time I went to Popeyes and I ordered something and I got like 5 different sauces with it. And while I was getting the sauces, the whole staff behind the counter heckled me the entire time. Do you want any chicken with that sauce? How are you gonna taste that chicken with all that sauce on it? That's gross. Why are you getting all that sauce? I got heckled by like 3 or 4 different employees when I'm just trying to get my chicken. And of course I like a lot of sauce. I'm Indian. We like everything saucy. Have you heard of curry? It's just sauce, spicy sauce. But I guess if you don't like Popeyes, you could always go to Chick-fil-A, right? Where everything's all good, really, unless you're gay. But okay, I'm very off topic now. You got me on this fast food rabbit hole. But here's how I feel about private equity. I feel like anyone who's getting into it, it's like really tough. Rebecca actually explains it in one of the scenes.
That's the thing about doing what I do. You're in these investments for so long, you really can't take any chances. I have to dive deep into all these companies, really understand what the businesses are doing.
Counting on that.
So the thing is, if you're getting into a private equity investment, you're investing for like a 10-year period. That's how long it takes for, say, a venture-backed company to go public. So if you're sitting in an investment that long, you got to know it in and out. Like, you got to be a true fundamental guy, and you got to know the company as well as the people actually running the company. And that's not easy to do, especially from the outside. And once you get into a private equity investment, it's not easy to get out. These are private investments. There's no public liquid market. So if you bought a share of Apple right now, you could sell it a second later later. I mean, you got to pay the transaction costs, or, you know, with some apps you don't, but you can get in and out. It's liquid. Private equity investments, though, not liquid. So it's really a different type of investing. It's more like value investing than anything else, at least for the holding periods. And that's part of the reason why only accredited investors can get into private equity. Not just anybody can jump on an app and start doing it. And I talked about what accredited investors are in a previous video with Wags when he got captured by that sovereign wealth fund. Definitely go check that out. And also, if you want to know how private equity firms make money, well, it's just like hedge funds, really. It's that 2 and 20 model, which is another video that I made. It's all in the Billions playlist. I'll actually link to that playlist here. You can watch both those videos. So for me personally, like, I would never get into private equity myself. If I was trying to diversify my assets, I would find someone who's good at private equity and try to invest with them. I wouldn't do it personally because I'm a public markets guy. You know the system I use, the Nasdaq All-Stars. That's momentum, and it lives off of hopping in and out of stocks. It's not trading too often, but there is still month-to-month liquidity, which is what it needs, you know? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link to that video too. Lots of video links. Mostly because I ran out of time to talk about this stuff because I talked about fast food for so damn long. But listen, we are going to get into all these topics a lot more. I'm going to keep pulling examples from Billions. Like, next video is about Rebecca Cantu, where the writers took that story from, her whole background. And if you guys see anything while you're watching that you want to go over, just comment down below. We will go over it, or I'll try to. But don't ask me about Taylor and their dad's equations. I cannot decipher that. I'm sorry. You can ask me what to order at Arby's. Like, I know that kind of stuff, but not those derivatives. I'm sorry. I'm not that smart. But anything else, comment down below. And smash like if you like this video. And make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you get an email notification when our next videos come out about Billions. We're having a good time going over it. Real good time. Come hang out with us. Subscribe, and I will see you in that next video. Stay fallible out there. Bye.